Welcome to the Conjugate Nation podcast.
Hello, everybody. We are back, and we're back with the man and legend, Adam Neiffer of CrossFit for Vancouver. Today, I think we're on episode 15, and it's been a while because we're all busy as, and it's hard to get a group of us together to talk about anything, even if it's only for but a few minutes. So, on the nose of this podcast, maybe we'll start with the business side of the house, as some say. It's a pretty small business side and mostly relates to social media. So if you are enjoying what you're listening to, you've listened to other episodes of the podcast, you would like to hear more, if you display that interest, it is more likely we all try harder to make this happen more often. So a way to do that is to follow us on our Instagram pages. It is helpful to, what do they say? Share, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, like, if you will. Get the little notification bell when we post stuff because it's not super frequent. So it may slip by you otherwise. And that sort of stuff kind of gets us fired up and makes us feel like we should keep working hard for this. Past that, if you have questions or things you'd love to hear us speak about, one way to see that to fruition is to reach out to us. So all of us are reachable out there in the world. Mostly, probably easiest is either to post to comments on the YouTube video itself or reach out to us on Instagram. Probably is the easiest way to get hold of the four of us. And finally, that's really it, actually. That's all my notes. That's my things I wrote down. Okay, past that. Here's what we're up to. So today, what we're going to do is the topic that we're going to discuss today is really about the people that you train with. So what are the great things and things that are awesome in the group of people that you spend your time with in the gym? And also, what do you bring to the table that positively contributes to that environment and makes those around you better? I think certainly coming from, I think one of the things that it's always resonated with me, and I probably suspect that the rest of us find this to be true, is that when you think about like Westside talk about the value of training partners and how critical it is to producing those results that are otherwise really hard to get, that I think all of us would say that that's a major part in what we've seen as coaches and probably also experienced as athletes. I mean, Adam was 10 years of CrossFit Games team. Like, surely that's a huge piece.
Yeah, 100%. It's tough to conceptualize kind of because it's not programming, it's not, weight on the bar, it's not quite as tangible as some of the nuts and bolts stuff that we do, but I think we can all identify with a feeling of being together with a group of people that we enjoy being around and training with those people that creates an environment where it just makes us better, right? As individuals and as a group. And so I think that's part of what we're here to talk about today is like, what attributes of that group dynamic and what individual pieces are we bringing to the table that makes a special training group or a special training environment that produces uncommon results? I think that's what we're trying to put our finger on here today.
And would you say that, like coming from Wildland Fire for sure, like both of us spent a bunch of years doing that. Would you say you found the same things to be true from Wildland Fire and working on a crew as you do like working both with your other coaching staff in the gym, but also like as an athlete and on a team that was going to the CrossFit Games and in those, like, do you feel like there's carryover between those things?
100%. Yeah. And I think those things that are carryover are attributes for like any high functioning team is going to have some just some commonalities that produce high level result. Whether it's a Wildland Fire crew, whether it's in a powerlifting gym, a CrossFit gym, a work environment, you name it. I think there's some things that'll contribute to a higher outcome than others. So yeah, I think that's a good place to start.
So we talk about the team, the team can be a few people, right? So when we look at the gym environment, and Shane, obviously you've seen Westside, and that the team obviously starting with Louie and having a leader, and then how you pair up training partners to, in CrossFit, we probably have one more layer where now we have kind of the generalists where those people are still a supportive group inside the facility that allow just a positive environment to get the most out of us. Like, for us in CrossFit, those would be people showing up to the competitions, right? To support the athlete they get to watch working their butt off in the gym. So you've got kind of these different layers. Starting with what are some of your observations, Shane, that you saw, starting off in obviously a gym that was, creating some of the best in the world?
Two of the things really is consistency and intensity. So one of the things that you find is I think you look at like Adam and Jesse coming from Wildland Fire is there's automatically an intensity there. Can't really get more intense than fire, right? So, but because of that intensity, I think that does bring people close. So the consistency was huge, was very important. Some of the strongest guys we ever saw come through the doors at Westside Barbell did not stay because they might have showed up 5 minutes late one day. There's a story about one of the guys, I wasn't there, but years ago, I know some of the guys talked about a guy. They said that was probably the strongest guy that ever walked through the doors. Was really regular for months, didn't miss any time. He drove a few hours to get there. Rolls in one day 5 minutes late, said, "Hey man, I'm extremely sorry. There's a traffic jam. 5 minutes late. He had a couple-hour drive." And they said, "Yeah, sorry, get out of here." And they just told him to leave, and he was the guy who showed some of the most potential for strength that we've ever seen walk through the doors. But 5 minutes late wasn't cutting it for the training partners. It seems pretty aggressive, and yet that is a world-class facility that produced more world records in powerlifting than any gym in history. But the number one thing is you had to be there for your training partners, right? So consistency is a massive factor in that. Then when you couple that with intensity, that intensity earns respect, right? So when you give everything that you have every time you're in the gym, mentally and physically, right? That allows other people to have a respect for you. And when your teammates are doing that, you have a respect for them because you're going through the same thing. You know exactly how hard it is and how few people there are in the world who are willing to do what you guys do every day in and out, of the gym to accomplish the goals that you're trying to accomplish. Okay. So these two things are actually extremely easy. It doesn't take much of a knowledge base to start there, to be consistent, to show up on time, to show up every day. And the thing is, people think you're asking them to show up for your partners and for the gym. No, I'm asking you to show up for yourself first. Okay. Show up for yourself. And, every day you make decisions. You have decisions. You can take the easy way or you can take the right way. Just take the correct way. It doesn't matter if it's harder. Just always choose the right path. Over time, if you keep doing that, it will add up to someone who is mentally strong, mentally tough, and has a lot to offer to their teammates.
I think that's a great first piece to address. Actually, it's I just had that. I was in that boat. I feel like on Monday, where just a really big weekend, pushing pace, falling behind on stuff. Up at 5 a.m., down the gym by 6 a.m., pushing pace all day through the day, and then get to 6 p.m. So 12 hours of being there later, starting to get ready to warm up for my lifting group for max effort lower for 6:15, and was just sitting on the computer upstairs and really was like, man, I'm just really tired and I'm like not feeling like I'm there, and was able to distill really what I needed down just to that base layer. Is like, you know what, all you really have to do is go downstairs, like just be consistent, and the day will go where it is, but I'm gonna not try to make assumptions about how it's gonna go. But my base layer step is just show up, like show up consistently. And they're like, and even I was like, man, I mean, we've had guys who if you're real sick, it's maybe different. We've had guys who have had injuries, stuff like that, who show up and run the monolift and they'll put in their 2.5 hours while the rest of us do lower, and they'll help plate the bar the best they can or run the mono or get the next station set up or tear down the last piece. And you're like, man, that is a crazy level of contribution to the team. Like, that's some of the parts for sure.
It also
Which is pretty
benefits
cool.
that athlete as well, right? Because even though they're not able to lift or train, they know they're doing the right thing by being there for their partners, but they also get to watch everybody lift, which makes you, kind of salivate and want to get in there, right? So they're going to do everything they can to overcome whatever sickness they have. They're going to rest up, and they're going to use that as a motivator to get back in. So it's something that helps your teammates, but it helps yourself. Again, that is making the right decision, not taking the easy way out of just staying in bed that day, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that, hey Jesse, just diving deeper on that. Who was downstairs when you were upstairs, like on your
Zach and
computer and
Corey.
tired? Yeah, right.
Exactly. The night crew, like the
And
full team of night crew. We're like, dude, what am I supposed to do? Like go home? You know, like in the
and
middle
what
of
is it?
this?
What is it about those dudes that like got you out of your chair and were like, I got to go downstairs right now, right?
Yeah, I mean that you like you have to be there. Like we're a team, so
Mm.
like we compete individually, but we still train as a team. And it's really important to um, like even if you can't bring it for that day, that base layer of like be consistent, show up, and then work as hard as what you've got. Right? Like I mean, one of the things that gets underestimated we talked about with Max's was that idea that it has to be an all-time best or a PR, but really we're just looking to produce the best result we possibly can on that day. So
Mm.
given those sort of things, by the time you start warming up, everything else, you realize, man, I'm fine. Like I'm just being mentally weak. And you start warming up and you get going with a group and then they're into it. And if like, I mean, if you don't run your mouth with a bunch of sad stories to start it off with like how life is like hard and it was a long day, like if you can leave that stuff, like away from the training environment and you just dig in with no excuses. I mean, it was a great training day. Like and you get done and you feel better. Like you get done, you're like, man, it's crazy to feel so tired and be like, I don't think I can do it. And you dig in and you put 2.5 hard hours in and you come out of it better off than you were when you started, you know?
You know,
Yeah. Yeah, it's like good training partners, like they give you the accountability to cut through your own BS.
Yeah.
Like when you're like, oh man, I'm tired and my fingers, I've been on the computer all day, and
Yeah.
Corey's coming from like welding all day,
Oh man,
and
being outside, just outside working on steel. What am I supposed to
yeah.
say?
yeah,
Life is hard. Life is
so
hard
good,
inside.
100%.
Yeah.
And those good training partners, they have a way of like just making it so that your excuses are just so inadequate that you're like, all right, like let's go, right? And it's crazy how some of
100%.
those times, like some of those days where you're like, man, I feel the worst, and I don't think this is gonna go well, are like oftentimes some of your best days in the gym. Like you don't have that
Yeah.
big expectations, and then you go out there and crush it, and you like your mindset is totally different afterwards.
Yep. Yeah.
It's pretty cool to have people like that in your life that have that accountability and that care for you, just in the same way that like you show up because you know that they're doing the same for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the hope would be that, like, so that's where I was at on Monday. The hope is like when those guys end up in that spot, that I can be there to support them. Right. And just be like,
Heck yeah.
yeah, dig in and let's go and push it and work hard. Right. Like that's the nice thing about a team is you're not always so reliant on just yourself. Like if you can lean on those around you and you've got a good support system, the difference that makes in training when it's like real hard or it's getting that time of year where we get less sun, the temps are less favorable, all those sort of pieces when you can have many hands make for light work, right? Like if everyone can carry some, one person doesn't have to carry so much.
Mm-hmm.
One thing at Westside, obviously the knowledge, right? But we always said right after the knowledge, the number two thing is atmosphere, right? But atmosphere is made by each individual, the sum of all the individuals together in that room. And, we talk about in the podcast all the time stuff like become a student of your sport. You first start off by showing up. You show up and you have the most positive attitude you can have, and you attack everything that comes in front of you and you go after it, right? But there's another layer to that where you become a student of your sport, and then you start to owe it to your training partners to study and learn about the sport and educate yourself and try to evolve. Louis always used to say, a lot of people would talk to him about being a strength coach. He goes, I'm not a strength coach. He's like, I'm a power lifter. I just have training partners that I help out. He's like, the best thing you can do is get the best training partners you can have. He's like, you don't need a coach. You need training partners. And people just look at him kind of weird, like you're a coach, but you're a coach. And he's like, no, I'm not a coach. I have training partners. Like I'm an athlete. And what he's getting at by that is no, in an average gym, you do need the coach, right? It's not going to be just training partners that are going to help you. But if you want a truly world-class facility, you want to turn everybody in those training groups into world-class coaches. So every eye in that gym has the ability to pick apart any movement faults or see where there's any weaknesses, slow down in speeds, where someone mentally maybe has a hang up or they physically have an issue that needs to be fixed. And so to become a student of your sport and for everybody to work with each other and try to improve each other is a massive thing. And I can tell you when I first went to a high-end powerlifting gym my first time, it was before Westside Barbell. I put as much effort into learning how to wrap knees, learning how to spot properly, learning how to find faults in technique, because that was a requirement of being a part of that training group. Is that, hey, we need every eye as possible looking at to find any fault we can find, and we need as many ideas as possible to figure out how to fix any issues that we might have. And for us to have a great training session, we have to walk away safe, right? Or have the highest ability to. Things happen, but we don't want it because somebody missed their part, didn't do their part. So become a student in your sport and really learning from others, and then trying to educate yourself to the ability where you have something else to bring to the table and that you can help critique your training partners as well, is what the end goal is. You really want every person training there to be a world-class coach by the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece on a bunch of levels. I think anything from on the simplest side of that, just being able to be, hey, you missed depth on that.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
sometimes it's a minor change, like you just don't notice it, and it sneaks away from you. And a training partner, and you have to be able to 100% rely on that person to be like, you didn't hit lockout, that you're missing elbow extension, or give any. It doesn't have to be even necessarily a solution. Even if they can just be like, hey, something's not right there, and they can grab the coach and the coach, hey, check this out. Like, I kind of feel like they're doing something funny with their shoulder. And like, oh yeah, totally. Here's what's going on. Like, even that is a really positive contribution that you miss out on when you're just that solo operator. It's like more eyes on is better than anything. I mean, Corey and Zach coach and give direction and cues all the time to, like, for sure me, but then other lifters. And I mean, I won't add anything if they're saying the right things. Like, I don't need to be the only one in the gym giving direction and advice. Like, if they've got good people and they're listening to their own, different podcasts, and they're reading their own stuff and have their own perspective or experiences, you're like, God, great. And, even as a coach, you can learn from listening to athletes talk to each other about, that sort of stuff.
One of the things, we all learn in different ways, right? And they might relay the same information that you are, but the way they view it, think about it, the way they take information in might be a little different. So they deliver it to somebody a different manner. And it could be something that you said, Jesse, 20 times to the same person, but for whatever reason, someone else says it, they say it in a different manner, and it clicks for them, you know? And so that's what's extremely important. We have these different eyes to look at things. The way people deliver information is huge. I would always tell my CrossFit coaches at my gym, I said, every time you cover dynamic effort or max effort or accessories, whenever you explain something and you explain it again, you explain the same thing more than once, change the way you explain it every time. Because you never know who's listening and how they get the information. But like Chris, like, what about for you guys, like doing red shirts, like working, doing seminar staff? I know that one of the things that you guys all have to train together, right? But everybody who goes to a CrossFit seminar notices how close all the workers are with each other and how there's a unity there.
Yeah. I mean, I think the big thing with the red shirts is there's a common goal of and a representation of what we how we feel about the red shirt and how we feel about CrossFit. Of just we have a privilege to be able to pass that knowledge forward and give it to others as it was given to us, and facilitate that as best we can for people. So that's certainly been a super strong team, and you guys talked about that with Fire. I think that any scenario where we can surround ourselves with better people and high level functioning people, like regardless of the situation, is going to make us better. But I don't think there's a better place to learn that than the gym. It's a small, all of us are talking about the community of, like, the people that are watching to the leaders that are allowing others to be able to coach and help them out, like facilitating an environment that there's just a good culture of helping others. And I think that brings kind of an important part of just, what's the mindset. And I think for me, one of the really cool things of, owning in my own affiliate for 14 years and, having some success with competitors, regionally and at the games, and then being able to step into Fort Vancouver. And, one of the big, pieces you kind of immediately recognize is, just what the mindset of the people is. And it's a very humble, obviously humble, hungry, awesome. It is very humble, and it's not just put up there for words. It's practiced from the top all the way down to the bottom, and it's being hungry. And you see that, people don't make excuses. And, even the people, regardless of the goal, whether it's you're competing at the games or you're trying to do Wadapaloozas or you're trying to do a local comp or you're trying to do an adventure race, marathon, 50 mile or whatever it is, You're going to come in with a positive attitude. You're going to attack that one workout with everything that you have. And you're going to try and make people around you better. And I think we see that with the CrossFit classes. If you can facilitate that, you're making a general population much stronger mentally, physically. And that's a super cool thing that, I don't think was really around a lot. I mean, obviously you had the powerlifting gyms, but the CrossFits really were able to kind of like, show how important it is to be able to train together in these bigger groups, at least, and making it more well known. Obviously, Great Shoot gyms have been doing this far before CrossFit was ever around. And it's just, I think it's just a higher quality. I know, Jesse, we've talked a little bit about, and Adam, I'd love to see kind of your mindset here because I get to see it, though we've never talked about it. How do you facilitate mindsets of, because to me, that's the kind of common glue. If you've got a good mindset and people are all in the same path, kind of like those red shirts that you're getting at, then that really is, I think an important driver of just being able to scale it up at a very, very, I mean, we got, you have hundreds of people at Fort Vancouver and it's ubiquitous across the gym.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with like a self-awareness of like, hey, what am I bringing into the room? Am I coming in here, whining, complaining, making excuses? That we were talking about this before we hit record. Those types of gossip or whatever, they do bring people together because it gives people something to complain about and to relate to, but they just have no value, whether that's in a gym or in your family or at work or whatnot. They don't have any positive contribution to to working toward a goal or to improving performance or anything like that. So having a self-awareness of like, hey, I want to try to, when I walk into a room, I want to try to like raise the level of what's possible with that group, right? And a lot of that for me means leading by example. So Jesse, you said, having training partners that aren't afraid to say, hey, you need to squat a little bit deeper. Like things are looking a little shallow today. Well, I have no credibility in making that statement if I'm riding the line and I'm half weighing it. I think that as training partners and certainly coaches and leaders in our communities, we got to walk the walk first and foremost, and have a self-awareness of what we're bringing to the table, and try to continually level up the people that are around us. And if you have enough people doing that in the same place, in the same environment, you create this atmosphere that Shane talked about a little bit at Westside, where it's like, man, the tide rises all ships. And so, I think a level of self-awareness and leading by example is a huge part of that.
Yeah, even that has its own consistency and the attention to detail on this piece. I mean, that's things that I've loved with the Wildland Fire. Is things I loved when the guys that I got to work with, like Todd Woodman and those guys, when we were doing regional stuff, is just like the attention to detail on the little pieces is the thing for me that really starts to, in the bigger picture, shape culture and build community one way or another. So you've got to be always very careful of those people who are a drop of ink in your glass of water, because like Adam was saying, like whining, complaining is very contagious, and you'll always find people who are like, yeah, that does sound hard, that's rough, like, oh man, my day was hard too. But the problem is it ends up moving the needle in the wrong direction. And that's where you've got to be very thoughtful about that sort of stuff, and recognizing that when you walk around, I even think the way that you move around the gym and how you behave has an effect on that. Like, I mean, you don't see this, I don't think, much at CrossFit gyms, but the idea of just leaving your dumbbells by your bench and walking away from them is insane. Like, that is a crazy thing to do. In our gym, it's putting the dumbbells away with the numbers up and facing down. And I mean, for me, it's a real struggle to make it past a dumbbell rack without correcting them when they're not right. Because, I mean, I think back to like 1998 and being a rookie at Rap Attack. And I remember I was walking like across the like courtyard area and walked past this like tinfoil gum wrapper thing on the ground. And one of the senior guys like, stop. And he's like, did you see that wrapper? And I was like, yeah, you better be honest here. And you're like, yeah. And he's like, and you chose not to pick it up. No. And you're just like, it's the worst. It's the worst feeling. Like and you're just like, that's a terrible, like, that's what I think about this community and culture is that's how I feel about it is like, oh, not my problem. And it's a live on base where we all have to function together. Like it was the worst. It was a terrible day, and that stuck with me. It's like, you can't, like, if you walk past that, it says, I don't care, or I don't care about this, or the people, and you're like, that sort of stuff. I mean, when that's an element, like, I mean, um, like there's those factors that I think are just such a big piece. When you see someone not squat below parallel in your training group and you don't say anything, that says something, because as a coach, you watch that happen. You're like, hey, did you see that squat? And they're like, yeah. You're like, was that below parallel? They're like, uh-uh. And then you decided that you like, who cares? Not you. You're not going to comment on that. You're not going to let that training partner know. You're like, that's rough, man. That is not a good training partner, or that's an athlete who needs to develop that skill, who doesn't have experience in working with teams. So it's not always like necessarily like, you don't want to necessarily come down on someone that's had no team experience or
You're a bad person.
Worked in this, yeah. Just full
Well, I think
metal
there's different
jacket.
levels of this. There's different levels of this too, right? Like if you're talking
Yeah,
about somebody
100%.
that's competing at a powerlifting meet, and you have
Yeah.
powerlifting meet competitors that are in that realm, or say for us CrossFit competitors, it's like, hey, shorting reps, not doing the proper ranges of motion,
Yeah.
whatever it is that you're taking the shortcuts. If you've got people that are, underneath that are trying to grow into those positions, obviously there's going to be some learning. But yeah, if you're competing, then that's a big part. I mean, that's what I think one of the major benefits of having, if we just look from a training partner to training partner, or people that you train with consistently, is your ability to get the most out of every single session that you can. It's that 1% better. Like if you're doing it by yourself versus doing it next to somebody, like how many times have we been in workouts where it's like, I don't want to add the extra 10 pounds, or I'd really like to rest 10 more seconds before I pick up this thruster, but that person's right behind me, or I'm going to try and catch this other person. And that's where, if you have the culture, and to me, that's where the culture is the foundation of, like, if you've got the proper leadership from the top and you've got a strong foundation of people that are all doing it for the right reasons to make all of us better, because that's where I think you talked about in the beginning. It starts with the individual, Shane or Jesse, where it starts with the individual. Like, you got to have the right mindset when you step into the gym first. And if you have that right mindset, then you now have the ability to help others. And from a short-term standpoint, we get to see, like, okay, cool. Like, we get that 1% better because I went a little bit harder. I could drive adaptations a little bit better. But then from a long-term standpoint, now you talked about some of that accountability. Like, Jesse, if you took that session off, on Monday, like, say that happens every 2 weeks, that's 25 sessions a year of volume that you just missed out on. That if you're trying to get better, like, that's a lot of volume that you just missed out on. And the fact that you just showed up, even if it wasn't a great workout, it's still showing up, doing the job. Those are massive, especially when you have people that have very specific goals. Like, those are really, really important things to consider.
Yeah, if you think, sorry,
We're good.
Go ahead, Shane.
Oh, no, as I say, there's a standard, right, to how you do things. And, it's extremely important. For me, if I was to show up to a powerlifting meet and I'm on a team, I want to execute my movements as cleanly as possible. I want to conduct myself in a good manner in the warm-up room, and I want to be polite to the judges and be professional, right? Because I want to show a great example, one example for the other people on the team, but also I want the judges and everybody in the community to think that's how all of us are, right? So I can only take care of myself. And if we all do our job as a team and we go someplace and we execute movement as cleanly as possible, we conduct ourselves in a very positive attitude. I always tell my athletes, if they get a red light, I said, even if you think you know what it was, ask the judge. I said, now you want to ask him in a polite manner. Judges are used to getting torn apart. Usually, if somebody goes to talk to a judge, it's because they want to bash him. And clearly, I had a clean lift. You don't know what you're doing. I mean, you're just the judge, right? So I always tell people, say, hey, do you mind telling me what I did wrong? I just want to make sure that I clean it up before and fix it before the next attempt. I'd really appreciate your advice. And they are more than welcome to, they're very happy to give you advice. So I'd say, hey, your butt came up off the bench. And sometimes they won't tell you any fixes. Sometimes if you're newer, they might say, hey, try taking her feet a little wider or adjusting this or whatever it is. But if you come back and you clean up that lift, they see that the judges are on your side now. It's positive. You show that you listen, right? That you're not that you're someone who's willing to take critique and advice, but you deliver the information to the judge in a manner that's nice and calm. It's shows you're being professional, because sometimes you don't know why you missed a lift. You might have thought it was uneven extension, but then the ref saw that your butt came off the bench. Well, you're doing something to fix the uneven extension. You still didn't correct the problem that actually existed. But where that comes into play is that when the refs and the judges are used to seeing your athletes from your gym and they're always polite to the officials, they conduct themselves in a great manner, they're very clean on their attempts. We all have lifts taken away from us. We all get lucky and get some lifts. I'm not asking for a gift, but I want to have the most positive mental state towards my lifters and myself if I show up to a competition. So that's how I'm going to conduct myself. So you owe it to your teammates as well to conduct yourself in a certain manner when you go compete, and you owe it to your training partners to lift clean. You don't want to have bad lifts, bad attempts. You look horrible when you go out there, and then the judges are just waiting for every one of your teammates to come up and keep a close eye on them, because it's like clearly they must be horrible too, because like usually that's how it is. Usually everybody's on point or everybody's not. So
Yeah, just thinking about, back to kind of what are these attributes that create good
mhm,
teamwork or good team dynamic. We talked a little bit earlier. I think Shane started off with consistency being number one, just showing up,
mhm,
intensity. So not just showing up, but showing up and working hard,
mhm,
holding the standard, that type of thing. And then there's the piece of like training with people that you like being around, like
mhm,
having a
mhm,
good time. And
mhm,
I think an underrated element of that is
mhm,
the friendly trash talk that is like a
mhm,
huge part of most successful gyms of like,
mhm,
there's like you want to see your partners do well, but you also want to beat them, right? And
mhm,
like that person that just hit that weight or did that many reps or got this time on a workout, like you should be working out with people that like, man, I'm thinking about it because I know after I
mhm,
go, Tyler's coming in at 4:30 and he's coming for my time every day. And I'm looking at the guy that was in there at 6 a.m. and I'm like, I'm gonna try to get him today or whatever. And like having that friendly banter is huge. It's just like
mhm,
it's a motivating part of training that just like makes it more enjoyable. And I think we all have people that we can probably think of that just allow us to have more fun in the process because it is hard work and it should be. But
Yep.
if you're not like enjoying the process, then it's going to lead to burnout anyway. And I
mhm,
actually love observing this in your gym, Jesse, because it's like,
mhm,
man, always good times, good vibes, high fives. But then people flip a switch, right? Like when you go to like take your lift, all of a sudden Jesse's like in the corner, like making noises and like stomping on the floor and like fixing his glasses and doing all the stuff. And it's like, man, he goes to town. And then as soon as he does his lift, he's like watching, helping, talking some trash to somebody else. And there's this dynamic that like, I don't think you can manufacture, but over time of people showing up consistently, bringing it, working hard, wanting to do their best, but also genuinely being interested in the people around them being successful,
mhm,
um, all contribute to this atmosphere that's like a lot of fun and creates a high performing team.
You know,
Yeah, it's a big piece. Like
mhm,
I've got like some of our guys will reach out during the week and be like, "Hey, I saw such and such the other night, and it looked like they were like doing this. Do you think they're doing this like because of this?" And like, because I was like, next week I was thinking of like suggesting like maybe they could try this. You're like, that's pretty cool that like in the middle of someone's workday, they're just thinking about one of the other people who's
mhm,
training, and then like why that might happen, and like are they thinking about it right, and are they identifying like
mhm,
the correct fix, and then trying to run that past to like have a positive contribution, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, being
mhm,
able to have that's true. Like I think Adam, like with that sort of piece for sure, like I think sometimes you get these environments where your people think that you either have community, you're either community driven or you're performance driven. And that performance driven is this intensity and craziness,
mhm,
and community driven is like we're having a great time and it's fun, but we're not worried about it. And I just don't agree. I
Oh
feel
man,
very strongly that you can
yeah,
very comfortably manage both of those things.
I think
they
you
Like,
have
should
to.
they should be symbiotic. They should be contributing to
Yeah.
one another. How many times have you talked to somebody that goes to a gym and they're like, well, we're not a competitive gym.
yeah, totally.
And you're like, well, just because you see, people that are competing in the sport coming from our gym doesn't mean that everybody in there is somebody that's trying to be the fittest on earth, right?
Yeah.
But everybody in there does share a a mindset when they come into the gym that they want to be better than the version that walked in, right? When they
Yeah.
leave, they want to be better than they were when they walked in. And that's, again, it comes back to the
Well,
culture piece that you guys are talking about.
I was gonna say there. I think that also that's a for me when I have aspiring people that are actually trying to take that next step. You first start CrossFit, you're like, okay, just do the thing, figure it out, go to a gym, and you see like they have some discipline, some dedication. They're committed to the lifestyle and they want to try to take another step. And it becomes like how do you one of the ways how do you make that person better? And immediately for me, like goes to environment. And we talk a little bit in level 2 about this, but like vicarious experiences are a big deal. So like Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile, nobody does it. 2 people do it the following year. That's obviously just looking at a competitive standpoint, but bring that into a gym. Like to me, it's like the goldfish analogy. Like you only grow as big as your environment, right? If you're in a small, tiny bowl, you have tiny goldfish. You get a bigger bowl, you have the opportunity now to become one of those bigger. And I think, that's one of the cool things at Ford is like, we got people that come in, could care less about the scores. It's a smaller percentage, but there's a next level of group that they're looking at other people's scores, or they're just going to try and keep up with somebody in the class. And then you have the higher level people that are like, hey, we're trying to, so these people are coming in. These aren't competitors. These are people that are, competitive in the sense like some of them don't do any competitions anymore. It's just like, hey, but performance still means something to me. And if I surround myself with these people that are, doing it at high levels, it enforces me to come in and like, okay, I got to get after it. And it's like, hey, I don't like my performance, and I can evaluate myself on a daily basis of what that looks like. I can then look at myself and be like, okay, like, why am I not keeping up with that person? Like, is my lifestyle in check? This is like my nutrition's gotten off track and I want to try to like keep up with that person. That's going to force me to start taking making those smaller decisions in the outside life. Like, hey, I want to go in and show myself. And that to me is what a healthy community does. And that's not a competition against somebody else necessarily. It's just a way for you to make yourself a little bit better by using your community or tribe or whatever you want to call it. And I do think that environment, that could be from somebody. I mean, your gym's a perfect, Fort Vancouver's a perfect example. You got 80-year-olds in there doing CrossFit, and you will see, some people doing Wadapalooza, qualifying events and gonna qualify, and then you see everybody in between. And but everybody's in there trying to get a little bit better. And I wouldn't say it's a competitive gym for some people. It's just their home. It just happens that there are some people that compete.
Yeah.
Something you were talking about, just to continue on with what you're saying. Some people say they're not competitive, right? But when you're first starting your journey, that means you have no clue what you are. You're starting a journey in a gym. You don't know what you're going to end, where you're going to end up, what you're going to become, what you're going to be. The only thing we should know is if you pick the right gym, there's going to be growth there. There's going to be growth mentally. There's going to be growth physically, right? And technology trickles down, not up. So Formula One cars give technology to passenger vehicles that everyday person can buy. It's not the opposite way around, right? So when you go into a facility, right? Westside Barbell, I was very lucky to be there, and the atmosphere was just mind blowing. You could feel the energy when we walk in the room. And then my goal was to have the same feeling going into a gym that anybody could join. And I feel like we did a great part doing that. And I will tell you that I believe every gym should be an educational facility. It should be a place where you can educate people on a manner of how to improve physical attributes they need to improve and ways to improve psychological attributes, right? And same thing for my gym. We've produced well over 100 world records in powerlifting, but I would tell you the majority of my lifters that come in are looking for their first meet. And I would say 80+% of my clients are people who just want to be in shape and be healthy, right? So what we use is technologies, and if you look, a lot of times, just my average client in the gym, they could go work at another gym and be a trainer. I mean, they have a really good knowledge base because they're learning the old time, because we're not just telling them what to do, we're educating them, but you're only going to get that at higher level gyms, right? So people get really scared to go into high level gyms and they want to start at a low level gym. I had a guy one time come up to me, call me, he's like, hey, I'm ready to personal train with you. I've been working for 4 years with another personal trainer so I could get good enough shape to work with you. Like, well, that's my job. You could have came here 4 years ago, and we could have been working together for a long time. And but I just thought it was hilarious that you got another personal trainer getting shaped good enough to train with me. I'm like, no. I don't care
It's
what
pretty
shape you already
cool.
show up.
It's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, that's probably the best compliment you could get as a coach,
Right.
Yeah.
But we all see it, right? We just want people to get in the gym, educate them. Every CrossFit's proven the whole point when we say, "Oh, I'm not competitive," and then the gun goes off and buzzer goes off and everybody's going like mad, right?
And you're like, well,
Um,
why are you doing half squats then so fast?
right? Yeah, right.
Hey,
Hey,
you
great
know
point.
what? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was thinking, Jesse,
Uh,
back to your
mm,
example in the beginning where those guys like, you had to just flip that switch and then go downstairs and it was a great day.
Yeah.
mm,
Um, but what if you're an athlete or a coach that doesn't have that doesn't have
mm,
that group of training partners or environment where you do feel like you're being poured into and where you do feel like you're you're like if you don't feel like what if you're a person that's just like, man, I don't have that environment. I don't have it.
mm.
What do you do then?
You
Yeah, I
make
mean,
it.
totally. I
Yeah.
think it's a piece of being able to be willing to make
Mm,
changes.
mm,
So with that, I think there's different, like training partners are always interesting. It's always interesting to
mm,
see, like I'm limited by time during the day. So I kind of ended up stuck at a pretty specific time with a pretty small amount of wiggle. So I end up training at this time. And then the people over, 15 years of the gym who I've trained with, it's been interesting to see like who have been like my highest value training partners and who I've got the most out of and who I've got the least out of. Because it does vary. I mean, there's and just like it's interesting things. Like it's part of that experience is like paying attention to how things are going
Mm-hmm.
and being willing to identify those pieces. And if you're in an environment, I think where you don't have that, you need to think about what you can change.
Yeah.
Like how you
mm,
can change to find or create that. Even if and being willing to recognize you may not even know what'll be the highest
mm,
value to you, but recognizing what's not working and be willing to try something different. Like
Yeah.
I was pretty sad. Like when we lost Big Matt, like he went over, he didn't pass away. He just went over to, he moved to the island, which I guess is not super far off that. But the like he's still training super hard and banging it out over there, but he's just not training with us day in, day out.
Yeah.
And I realized like, oh man, I really valued how motivated he was to see us be successful. Like that actually was like higher value to me than I would have guessed. Because I'm like, oh, I've spent a ton of time training on my own for different sports, um, but it was crazy to see that. Like, I mean, we give each other a pretty hard time uh, through our training sessions, but he really loves to see people make their lift and you can hear it in his voice and it's so communicative. And I was like, man, that really actually like makes a big difference.
It's a big
Like
deal.
it's a big deal. And so like that was a piece where I was like, like it was such a loss for like our group to lose that like dude who was just like so excited to like see you make the lift.
Yeah.
Right. And so like that's
Yeah.
a piece where, it's just in my mind of like, man, I really look forward to like Corey and Zach and the crew we've got now are great. I mean, we definitely support each other. We work hard. We coach each other. But there's always like, what could we add? Who's the person? What's the personality type? Like, it doesn't have to be someone who's also the same strength. It's just like someone who's just really great in the group, like
Yeah.
being a positive contribution or like filling a gap in that sort of piece. And I think if you're in an environment or find yourself currently in an environment where that's just not working or it's not, if you're training out of your garage, if what, like you need to try to find somebody, like you need to find either a partner to pull in, a better place to go, a
Yeah.
community that you can be involved with. Because for sure, I've been training hard as I can for sport for more than 25 years. And um, what's pushed my progress the most is being accountable and training with others. Like as
yeah.
hard as I think I'm working when I'm by myself, it is just actually not the same
And
as when I get the chance to be with others.
sometimes being open-minded too. There is, I would tell you, some of the best people I've ever had in my gym are some of the people I've tried to run off. One of them I've even threatened, and end up being some of the best training partners, and I'm threatening. I'm like gonna stomp this guy into the ground, like I'm like this is not the place for you. I was like, you're gonna mess up, and if you do, I'm gonna beat you. And he stayed and ended up being one of the best people I've had in my gym. He helped. I mean, it was funny because not only did he train hard and he spotted well, but he was the one who kept everybody in order and made sure everything was done with respect and everything was done in a certain manner. And you would have never
Yeah.
expected that he was the guy who was going to do that. But Adam, that question that you asked Jesse, I had the same question from somebody that used to come out to my gym about every 6 months, and they spend a couple weeks out at my gym. And the guy's just like, man, I love this gym, but he lives halfway across the country. He's got a life, a
Yeah.
job, and his wife and stuff. And he's like, God, I wish I had this. I said, so build it. And he's like, what? I go, build it. He's like, well, how do you do that? I go, I said, train in a manner that you do everything that you wish a training partner that you had would do. Consistent, intensity, the execution's clean, do everything you've ever wanted out of a training partner. Eventually, someone's going to see your results, see your output, because you're going to have great results and output if you do everything you've ever wanted out of somebody else. And somebody's going to join you. And then that person who joins you is probably a really good shot. They're going to be somebody who's a good part of it because they're joining somebody who already know who trains intense, who's consistent. You have these key features that they've probably been looking for a while. And I was like, after a while, you just start to attract. Kind attracts kind, and you just start to attract that. But you only attract that if you are showing and executing those attributes that you're looking for as well, So if
Yeah.
you guys
Yeah.
are out there, don't be afraid to build it, you know.
Dude,
That's
I think Shane, and when I asked that question,
Mm,
I was kind of trying to throw myself a softball and answer my own question, but I
yeah.
think you hit the nail on the head.
Go.
If you're a person that is in an environment that is not
Mm,
productive, and you'll
mm,
know because either you're not having a good time or you're
mhm,
not seeing results, those type of things. I mean, you really got two options, right? You can either
mhm,
like you can change your environment, which doesn't mean you need to leave your gym. It might mean that you train at a different time or train with a different group or train with a different coach or get some extra help that way. It might mean that you do look for a different scenery. It
mhm,
might be a change of scenery, but it's either one of those options or you got to look in the mirror and change what you're bringing to the table, right? If you want to
mhm,
if you want to see something different, you got to be part of the solution, which
yep.
is exactly what you said, building it, being that training partner for other people that makes them better, and eventually that stuff comes full circle, right? Where they provide that for you as well. And
correct.
so, I think there's a lot of there, if you're in a situation right now where you're not loving it,
Mm.
you can make a change in that environment, or you can be a part of the solution to make it better. Either
You
way
Hmm.
will
know,
work.
Adam's mentioned something a couple times on this podcast. He's talked about having fun, enjoying, right? And this sounds kind of funny that it should be even something we have to talk about, but everybody goes in the gym for the same exact reason, whether it's somebody who wants to train so their kids can see what a good, healthy lifestyle is, or someone who wants to break a world record. It doesn't really matter. Everybody's there to improve their quality of life. And I don't know how you do that not having fun. Okay. So for me, I either want to work and evolve or I want to have fun. It has to be one of those two things have to be going on. I could care less about anything in between. I want to either have fun or I want to evolve, and I want to push. But if you're not having fun, it's hard. It's hard enough to stick to these things that are very difficult. Every training day is going to be difficult. You're going to train hard. It's not going to be easy. It is easy in my mind though when you're having fun and you're enjoying yourself. If you're not enjoying yourself, you don't like the people you're around, it's going to be hard to be consistent. It's going to be hard to keep pushing and stay in the game long enough, right, to really achieve amazing results. So Adam's mentioned a lot. If you come to my gym, same thing. I want people to have fun. I expect them to be consistent. I expect them to train hard, and but I want us to have just as much fun as we are in training. One of the things I did a few years ago, I found people weren't pushing certain accessories hard enough or certain movements. So we put on the board men and women. We put the main lift, all the accessories, and then we put what the gym record for all the accessories in the main lift was next to each one. And then whoever hit the highest number at that point had to put their name on, knowing that if you train at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, that someone at 6, 7 o'clock at night who comes in to train gets to see your numbers and gets to go after them. And it is much easier to go after numbers that already exist. So if you don't want that
Yes.
number getting beat, you better put it high enough, you know? So I feel like
Heck
little
yeah.
things like that can make it fun too as well.
Yeah.
I like that piece for sure. I agree. Like that ability to be the change, I think, is a
Mhm,
huge component. Definitely inside of like training groups, times a day, you get. I definitely have end up. You get an athlete who reaches out, and be like, oh, I just feel like I've got those like couple people in my group who are like they don't have much experience, so they're slowing us down, or this person likes to talk a
mhm,
lot and it slows us down. And it's always hard not to feel like you're like, I'll listen to this person
mhm.
complain about someone in the group that they're part of.
hmm
Like if you're part of this group and someone's slowing you down because they talk a lot, I mean, what's the easiest way to fix that? Is like step up and take
hmm
leadership of that. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, there's a piece from Haga Kerr, book
I agree.
it's translated from, yeah. And where they talk about like being able to identify someone else's weaknesses is very easy to do. Being able to tell that person their problems and weaknesses, also very easy to do. And when they don't hear that, then the person blames them. But the problem lies in your established relationship with that person and you not being heard. So when you build a relationship with the people you train with and the people you work with, I mean, this is Adam and I working with Justin and the rest of the team, but you need to really think about how you engage and interact with those people day in, day out, because when you have something to share, you really want to make sure it's going to be heard. And if they don't listen or take that advice, it may not be their fault. It may be the relationship you've established with them that they're not interested in listening to you, whether you're right or wrong. And so because of that, I would say that some of that ability to make change, if you recognize a piece like that, if you're like, well, I told them they're way behind. And I think this is actually one of the things I was talking about, really don't get too far off tangent, is one of my complaints with some of the content on some YouTube channels being so negative, especially the stuff around like, CrossFit and like, oh, here's a problem with them. Here's a problem with them doing this. And like, look, like this doesn't work in a relationship and it's probably not going to work any better here. Like if you have a partner who you don't like something about what they're up to, or you have a suggestion that you may feel helps them, nobody is going to take advice or direction from you telling them all the things you're doing wrong. Like here, I told them all the things they're doing wrong and they didn't change it. Like, come on. Like, what are we doing? And so,
are you telling them for them or for you?
yeah, like, it's like, well, I told them everything they're doing wrong. They didn't listen to me. And you're like, that's crazy. This is not a reasonable thing to do. And so because of that, I mean, I think it's really worth thinking about in those environments you're in is like how you are being perceived by others in that group. And that if you're like, hey, we're taking too long between these stations, how do I fix this? You might have to run through a whole bunch of different attempts at making that choice. Be like, okay, I'm going to be the first person to lift then. So if I lead the set, if we spend 3 minutes between our accessory work and I want to spend 60 seconds between that accessory work, why don't I go first? Because if I'm the first person to go, as soon as I'm off the bench or out of the rack, that next person is on them to go. And then you can push the pace. But if you allow yourself to get drawn in conversations, stand around, I mean, the person who's doing the talking may or may not be the problem. And so I really think that's a huge piece. I mean, consistency, intensity, like we talked about at the start, are huge, but being able to be that positive change and then being able to, like, even if you don't get it right the first time, like, similar stuff with food is you don't have to get it right away. Like if you're not a natural leader, if you're like, oh, I tried to, talk to the group or explain this and it didn't work, then you need to keep thinking. You need to keep thinking about trying to find a solution and fix a situation that you're in until the point where like, look, I've tried this, I've tried this. It's been a bunch of months, still not better. Okay. Then maybe that's time when it's just not the right fit. And that can 100% happen with any relationship, right?
One of the things that I like to do, we like to set up for our gym, and when people come in, they start lifting, they want to get into powerlifting, and they show some aptitude towards it. I think it's a good thing to, I give them suggestions on books to read, right? And if they actually read those books, now we'll take it another level. And I tell people, look, okay, if you want to join the team for the next year, I don't want you to see you miss any workouts. I don't want you to see any bars left loaded. I want you to unload everything. Whenever somebody needs help, offer a spot. If you don't know how, ask somebody. Ask me, ask anybody. We'll help. And if I see for a year that you're unloading all your weight, you're consistent, I can ask you questions from the book and you can answer them, then I'll give you a shot with the team. Now you go train the team. When I tell a team, I see what time they're training at, what team I think that'd be the best group to join. Go up to that group. Hey, you guys have a new training partner. They're going to be joining you. And I always remind them, if you come up and you complain that they're not putting their weight away, or you don't like the way they spot, or you don't like their attitude when they lift. I'm like, I guys, we want you to realize that's your failure. You build the training partner you always wanted to have. They are new. They don't know what they're supposed to do. You know what you want out of it. You want someone who spots well, show them how to spot well. You want someone who's consistent, make sure that's part of your group. It's important to your group. If you want them to further the education, give them books to read, ask them questions, quiz them when they're coming and working out, And then what we do is once we show they've been training good, consistent, we know they should be getting ready for a meet. We'll pick out a meet, we'll give them plenty of time, and I'll give them a total. And if they can hit that total, they get to stay. Now, it's not a total like, hey, hit a 2,000-pound plus total your first time out. Yeah, everybody gets to stay. But no, yeah. I mean, I don't care. It doesn't have to be elite. It doesn't even have to be, it literally could hit 100 pounds. It could be a 300-pound total for all I care. What I care about, I don't care about how much they lift. The way I look at it, that's always been my job to make someone strong. I care about the personality. I care about the consistency. I care about the intensity. I care about what they bring to the table. And they can be the weakest person on the planet. If they bring everything to the table that I'm looking for, they are extremely important part of that team. But I do make sure that the team knows if you guys are complaining about the spotting, the consistency, the personality, complaining, anything like that, it's on you guys. You guys are to lead by example, which means you can't complain when you train. You have to spot others well. You have to put all your stuff away, and you have to further your education too, because you have to ask, be able to ask them questions, and they have to be able to level up at all consistent times. So you have an opportunity to build the exact partner you want. And if you're complaining about that person, you're probably the one failing that, most likely. Once in a while, the other person might just be someone who's just not going to listen. But I'm telling you, 99, you guys know this. I don't tell you guys this, but 99.9% of the time, it's the higher ups, the people who already been there, who are experienced. They're the ones at fault if the person's not doing everything they should be doing as a partner.
And if you're planning on training for a long time, that investing in new people is a great way to, meet new people. And you don't know how quickly some people build. I mean, if you've got a good, strong training group, the easiest way to get stronger is train with a stronger group. Like train where it's at your upper edge. And if you can not be overly emotionally invested in the training session, work hard, positively contribute to that group, man, the gains you'll see. We've got a new guy, a new guy to our training group who started working with us the last little bit. Man, I bet he gets real strong in this next 6 months. So he's a ways off our lifts currently, but I bet he's going to get, and he just noticed, it came to him. He's like, look, I've been kind of working at my, he's been with us in the gym for a while. But he's been kind of working, on his own station at about the same time as us, and just decided to forget it. And he's kind of worked in with us now. And I was like, oh, I bet this next 6 months is going to be a massive change for him. He's going to be infinitely more educated. He's going to learn a ton, and he's going to evolve super quickly. And that investment, although it might be you're like, oh man, it's a big weight change between, him on one end and, Corey on the other end. And because Corey's always at the one end, and right now, but that's going to close down. His motivation is high, and I bet that starts to close really fast. It'll be crazy to see what it looks like 6 months from now. And I think I've seen it on the CrossFit side too, is with people who are competitive looking to try to find other competitive teammates. So looking for talent in the pool and then drawing them into their group and hey, come Thursday and do the session with us. Let's work on handstand push-ups together. And you watch these people who have been at CrossFit a year, and others are how did they get so good? They got fostered into a system and taken care of, and they showed up. They brought a good attitude. They brought consistency. They brought their intensity, and then other people helped them learn those skills. And now they're a huge positive contribution to the group that they work with. And that's really cool. I think it's something that can easily be undervalued. It's just oh, this person's a headache today. But a headache today might be one of the most valuable people you get to train with down the road.
Good, and that's the power of a strong culture. We've all trained with that person that annoys us in the gym, and they either are so bad, or they have an ego that they don't stay, or they become one of us, right?
Yeah,
and they become a contributing member of the community, and that's pretty cool. That's fun to see.
Yeah, super cool.
I think for people out there too, what we're talking about, also it's important for you guys to look for the community or system, right? So when we look at sports, we look at all the best college basketball teams are just a few schools. Football is just a few schools. Wrestling are always the same schools. You look at where the best kickboxers come out of, it's the Dutch or the Thais, you know. You look at jiu-jitsu, like, you know, you have a lot of Brazilian, you know, coaches that are world class. But it's systems that build. So if you find like a gym that has a phenomenal system they follow and they have a great culture, that's when you have your best opportunity to see what you can actually be, because you have plenty of examples, you know. And obviously Adam knows that. If you go to his gym or you go to Jesse's gym, you go, any of these three guys on here, you go to go to where they train, and you'll see that. But do yourself a favor. Um, if you don't feel like you have the system, successful system, you don't feel like you have the culture, start looking for other gyms in your area, you know. And also make sure that you are a part of the positive end of that culture, not the negative end. Okay. So if you don't like the culture that's going on, but if you're contributing to the negative part of it, it doesn't matter where you go. You know, you have to be a positive member anywhere you go. And if you go to a place that has a phenomenal culture and system, if you don't turn it from negative to positive pretty quick, you're not going to last long.
Should we tuck it in there? Look at almost under an hour. We'll see. I'll try to edit just a little bit out and we'll tuck it in. Chris, Adam, any closing pieces from you guys?
I would say, there tends to be, especially CrossFit community, which is where I see most of my athletes is, and especially on staff going around the world. There's programming is kind of put on a pedestal, and programming is obviously super important. Like bad programming, you're not going to get anywhere. But I feel like it's surpassed some of the other very critical considerations when you talk about a long-term training environment and system. And I would take good programming with a good team over great, perfect programming 10 times out of 10. And even the remote programming I do with my athletes, it's if they have a CrossFit class that they can jump in and they know there's going to be people in there that's going to push them harder than they would be on their own. I want them in the class. I don't care. You don't have to do the workout that's in there for me. I want you to train with people next to you that's going to make you stronger, make you work harder than you want to. So if you can find those people, hold on to them as best you can, and do your best to search out for them. It's not obviously realistic for everyone, but if you keep your eye out long enough and you're in the game long enough, you'll find somebody that'll join you.
Heck yeah. Well said, Chris.
We can leave it there, boys. Thanks for everyone making it happen. I really am not lying when I say it takes quite a few weeks and quite a few text threads to coordinate 1 hour in this group. But like I said at the start, if you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, don't be afraid to share it with others. Don't be afraid to like, subscribe, follow us on the places and the things, especially Adam. He's a huge social media guy. He really, don't be afraid to give him the Instagram heart.
Dude, check out my MySpace.
All right, boys. We'll click it off here.
Conjugate Nation Podcast.